Not very far from where I live, there are two ponds. Originally they were one, but now they're known as Creekmore ponds, and there's a small pond of maybe an acre and a bigger pond that's about 3 acres. The small pond is quite clear and the bigger one has more colour because more water drains into the big pond, and if we get a lot of rain it colours up. There's also more algal blooms in the big pond. As a way of a change, decided to fish the small pond on the pole, and to put an underwater camera down where I was fishing to see what would appear. Now this camera is on the end of about a 7.5 metre margin pole, very strong pole, not a very expensive one, but we can't see what's actually happening underwater, so it's a case of making sure the batteries are charged on it and setting it running and just putting it underwater and timing how long it's under there. It does 15-minute videos and then does another one, and one full charge battery will run for about an hour, which isn't too bad, or over an hour at least. So that's what we did. My mate Richard was filming me, and I fished away for about 3/4 of an hour, and there was not a single sign of life. No fish topping, no bites. Didn't know if there was anything going on underwater, and I was getting a bit frustrated with this. It wasn't particularly warm. I was in the shade of some trees, and I didn't have a lot of time for the fishing session, so I said, right, let's shift back to the big pond, the main pond, and see if I could at least catch something. And the pole and pole rig that I had set up was perfect for a swim that was pretty much one of the closest anyway. It was a rig I'd used previously on that other bigger pond and on that particular swim. So that's what we did. We moved 50 yards or so back to the big pond, and I got set up there fairly quickly and started fishing. After a little while I had the wind was now in my face, and I had what seemed to be a slow bite. The float didn't go completely under, but it did do something that looked like a bite, and the maggots came back. They were sort of stretched, they weren't chewed, but something had definitely had a go at them, and I carried on fishing. Not long after that I missed a proper bite, fairly quick bite, and then I caught a little roach of an ounce or so. And so far at least I'd caught something, and then I hooked something much bigger on the pole. The elastic went out, had some lilies to my left, and the fish was pretty determined to get in there, as you can see here. It kept pulling away, and eventually it all went solid. I got a glimpse of the fish. It sort of rolled over on the top a couple of times, and I know that in the big pond in Creekmore there were some big hybrids. There were 3 in particular that when I fished the pond a great deal 2 years ago, I kept catching the same 3 fish. One was bang on 2 pounds, looked very roach-like. There was another one of 114 that had a lip that was damaged, and I caught that, I think, over the course of a couple of years about a dozen times. And there was another smaller one about 1.9, and I did get other smaller fish of about a pound that were hybrids. I also caught roach to 2.2, and the roach looked distinctly different to the hybrids. You could tell pretty much at a glance generally that which were which. There were also some rudd in there, ordinary rudd up to a good pound, good fish. But one of the problems on the pond is that the cormorants keep hitting it in the winter. I don't think it's many cormorants, there's not a massive stock of fish in there. It's got generally a natural stock. There are carp stocked in there, but I don't know how long the roach have been in there, whether they were stocked or restocked. The reason for this is that I fished these waters quite a lot as did many others, from about the mid-80s, around about 84 to the early 90s, and then there were changes to the land drainage and the fishing became very difficult. A lot of fish died and no one bothered. I certainly didn't bother fishing it. And then when I rejoined Wimborne about 4 or 5 years ago, I started fishing Creekmore again. It's, like I say, it's very close. I can get there in not much more than 5 minutes. Fairly quick access. And like I say, started to pick up some good roach. Even that first time I was getting roach to about 1.7 plus 1 or 2 of these hybrids. And I was hearing tales of £2 roach and wondering, are people claiming hybrids as £2 roach? Are there really £2 roach in there, which is definitely a possibility? What is the real story? And I'm just fishing randomly on different swims in different ways. And then, like I say, 2 years ago I fished very, very hard, and eventually I did 40 sessions on there. I did get a 2.2 roach. So back to this session, I've now lost this big fish that I suspect is a hybrid. It's strong fighting, only on about number 5 or number 6 elastic, and I just couldn't get it away from the roots of the lilies or the stems of the lilies, and I've ended up hooked into one of the stems. I've pulled for a break. The hook has pulled out. It's only a fine wire 20 and it didn't bend out or anything. It's just come free. Got back into fishing again, and soon after caught a small rudd. And then we get to the highlight of the session. I've hooked another big fish, and my first thoughts on landing it is that it was the £2 hybrid that I'd caught a number of times a couple of years ago. And these hybrids almost seem to seek anglers out. It's almost like they wander around the lake and they think, oh, there's someone fishing over there throwing maggots in. We'll go and keep them company and take their maggots, because I've caught the hybrids in swims all over the pond. We can only fish sort of 2 sides out of 4 effectively. It's not a square lake, but there is limited access to about 8 or 9 swims at the most, but they haven't always turned up in a single swim. They have moved around. Anyway, I've put the picture up on Facebook. Going to see this fish here again. I'm not 100% sure it's the £2 hybrid that I was catching 2 years ago. It's in quite tatty condition, this fish now. It looks like it's escaped from the cormorants once or twice. Tail seems to have been in a keep. It shows it might have been in a keep net at some point. It's got a bit tatty, which is a shame. The mouth on it is quite small, which was true of the £2 hybrid I caught before. And the opinions on Facebook were sort of split and don't know. And it is one of the few fish that I've caught. Usually I can pick out the roach rod hybrids quite easily. This one, I don't know. The mouth looks roach, correct for a roach. The dorsal might be a little bit far back. There's a bit more dense colour in the fins than you might expect from the roach in this water, which they tend to be fairly pale and translucent fins. And I guess I'm never going to know. A DNA test that someone suggested, which is fine. Firstly, I'd need to take a scale off it. But secondly, I'd have to find someone to actually do that DNA test. And there's no one I know that would do one for free. And I think it would be surprisingly expensive to get a test done. A commercial lab might well charge £300. I can pass on knowing the truth about this fish. Am I going to count it towards my all-time tally of £2 roach? I don't think so. I don't think it matters. No one really cares. It only matters to me anyway. It was a good fish. It was nice to catch it, and I'm glad people have enjoyed having a look at it. and pondering what it's all about. In case anyone's wondering, the only hybrid it could be is roach rudd. There's never, as far as I know, been a head of bream in Creekmore Pond. Back in the late 80s, there was a single bream of about £3. I think there might have been one or two skimmers in there. But the £3 bream, we used to call it lucky, because if you caught it in a match, and it used to turn up most matches, it was a tatty old thing, you were lucky because you had a £3 bonus fish to add to your catch. On that note, I wish you well in your fishing. I'm going to hopefully do some much better fishing as the weather starts to warm up. Get out on the still waters a bit, a few jobs out of the way. Please subscribe. Please click like if you like this. I'd like to remind you that my second roach book, Big Roach 2, is still available from calmproductions.com. The number of copies is starting to go down. There's not going to be another reprint. It's coming down into the tens now rather than the hundreds. There's probably enough to last a year or so, but don't come running to me when you can't buy one in a couple of years' time. Anyway, goodbye for now, and see you soon.